Okay, we're back, and we're going to be talking about emotions. So there are multiple theories of emotion. Here are the basic components that are considered in the theories. One is the idea that there is physiological activation. That could be measured by heart rate. It could be measured by your palms sweating. It could be measured by your stomach churning. Maybe you call it butterflies in your stomach, stuff like that. Then there's expressive behavior that might be present with an emotion. So smiling is an example of an expressive behavior, or frowning, or things like that. It could also include things like hand gestures, body posture, eye rolling, things like that. And then conscious experience. So, what is going on at the moment? Am I with friends or am I with strangers? That may help me to decide whether what I'm experiencing is pleasure or anxiety, things like that. And then all these things come together to determine what emotion you think you're experiencing. So I started with physiological activation because a lot of times we don't really think about the fact that all emotions carry some kind of physiological activation. And then a lot of times the only way we know what emotion a person must be experiencing is through their expressive behavior, because we don't know what's going on inside of them a lot of the time unless we're doing research and we're actually measuring that. And then, of course, there's that cognitive component where they're consciously experiencing where they are that is going to help to contribute to the label that they give to the experience that they're having. So let's look at some examples. All right. Physiological arousal. I keep using this term anyway, so let's break it down. So physiological arousal comes out of your sympathetic nervous system, right, when you're aroused. So you guys remember that from chapter 2. Your sympathetic nervous system is the part of your brain that arouses you for fight or for flight is the simplistic way of describing it, right? So with our eyes, our pupils dilate. We salivate less when we are physiologically aroused. Our skin perspires, so you get sweaty palms or sweaty under your arms. You breathe faster, so your respiration increases, your heart rate increases. You stop digesting the last meal that you ate. You secrete adrenaline from your adrenal glands, those stress hormones, which then lead to cortisol. And then ultimately, your immune system will function less. So if this were ongoing for some period of time, that you're experiencing this kind of physiological arousal, it can expose you to illness. Now, after physiological arousal is when the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, just to bring you full circle back to chapter 2, right? So the parasympathetic nervous system calms you down, reverses all the effects of the sympathetic nervous system, so that you return back to homeostasis. All right, so just a reminder of what physiological arousal means in psychological terms. Okay. So we've got emotions being the result of physiological activation plus expressive behaviors plus your conscious experience. So let's say you're driving on a 2-lane road and you see a car coming towards you that is straddling the center line and moving into your lane, and you are like, oh my gosh, we're going to have a head-on collision. The James Lange theory says that pounding heart, oh my gosh moment comes first, and then you label it as fear. Given the context, you're driving down a road and a car looks like it's going to have a collision with you, that fight or flight sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and then your brain labels it fear that you're experiencing. So, according to James, who's the first guy there in that title, James says, we feel afraid because we tremble. If we weren't trembling, we wouldn't detect it as fear. We would say it's something else. Okay, sorry, I had to check out my... Okay, go away notifications so I can go back. Thank you. Had to check out my display here. Well, now my computer's mad at me, so all right. back to what we were doing. Note to self, never check what's going on. All right. So he says we feel fear because we tremble. So do we feel angry because we're trying to touch the tips of the golf tees that are glued to our eyebrows? Right? So see this woman, she's got golf tees glued to her eyebrows, and her job, as assigned by the researchers, is to try and use her facial muscles to get the tips of those golf tees to touch each other. So notice how she looks neutral on the left and she looks angry on the right. Well, research has shown, making people do stuff like this, that she actually will feel more angry after engaging in these facial manipulations to try and get those golf tees to touch, even though nothing else happened. I'm just making this angry face. I actually score higher on a scale of anger. Same thing was found with research where they asked people to hold a pencil between their teeth without letting their lips touch the pencil. So they tell them, squeeze your eyes shut, hold this pencil between your teeth, and don't let your lips touch the pencil. Well, if you're going to be holding your lips back like that, it's kind of in the same posture as a smile. And what they find is that people actually feel happier after holding a pencil like that than they do after just sitting neutrally. And absolutely happier than they would if they had to put golf tees on their eyebrows and try and touch them. So this is some support for the James Lange theory, the idea that the things that my body is experiencing determine the emotions that I have. Here's another way of making a person smile. They actually had this little headband, and they used strips of tape to pull the muscles of the face backwards into sort of a smile. Same thing as the pencil. The person reported feeling happier after wearing that headset than they had reported when they weren't wearing the headset. So your face having certain facial expressions, your body experiencing, an increased heart rate, or, your hands feeling sweaty, those things can lead you to say, I must be scared, I must be happy, I must be angry. All right, this is what I was searching for on that other slide. I forgot. I reorganized stuff. Now there's another theory. Don't worry, there's going to be another one after this too. So we're in the same situation. Car is coming, it looks like it's going to hit us. According to the Cannon-Bard theory, the arousal and the emotion happen simultaneously. So it's not like you wait to say, wow, my heart is really pounding and there's a car coming towards me, I must be scared. Instead, it's, fear and heart acceleration occur simultaneously. So in this model, it's much more like, is that a threat? Then I must be afraid, right? That what I'm experiencing, that sympathetic nervous system kicking in and, a threatening stimulus occurring in front of me all happens all at one time and I go scared. If instead my heart is pounding and there's an attractive person in front of me that I might be interested in, I would label it as sexual attraction, right? So the bodily symptoms are exactly the same. Context is different, so I would label it something different. Our last theory is Schachter's two-factor theory, which says that we have the pounding heart, the cognitive label happening simultaneously, and that leads to the emotion that we experience. So when I have a pounding heart because there's an oncoming car, and I think to myself, oh my gosh, I'm so scared, the emotion that we experience then is fear. If, on the other hand, I've got a pounding heart and the cognitive label is, wow, that person's attractive, then I would label it as sexual attraction instead, something like that. Now you'll notice that two of these theories, the Schachter theory and the James Lange theory, have the arousal coming before the emotion. So 2 out of the 3 theories of emotion assume that your body reacts and then your brain reacts, and then you label it as the emotion. The Cannon-Bard is the only one that says it happens simultaneously. So in the Schachter theory, it would be like, why is my heart pounding? It must be because I'm scared, right? So pounding heart, I am afraid. Why am I feeling like this? It's fear. A good example of this comes from treatment of people who have phobias. And a lot of times if you relabel their heart rate accelerations as excitement instead of fear, it helps them to get over this terrorizing, phobic response to a stimulus. Instead, they go, well, maybe I'm just excited about it, or maybe I'm just, it's making my heart rate go up, but that doesn't mean it's fear. It could be something else, right? Like excitement or enthusiasm or something else that's more positive. So one treatment that seems to work pretty well for phobias is relabeling what their body responses mean. All right. I love that these are baby pictures because a lot of our emotional expressions are very early expressions, which implies that they're probably unlearned, that a lot of these are just natural. This is the response to certain kinds of stimuli. So for most babies, the joy smile will come before anger. Like they'll be a little older when they learn the anger expressions. But frustration and stuff can look like anger. But you've probably seen these faces on babies, right? And they're all labeled, so you can kind of look at them. And they're very consistent between babies and adults. I mean, once we start expressing emotions, we pretty much express them the same way on our face for the rest of our lives. Like these are natural muscular contractions that happen on our faces that express things. Now, one of the things that's really a hot topic right now in evolutionary psychology is whether the joy smile that humans show is truly innate or is it learned. And one of the things they point to is that other primates, when they bare their teeth like a smile, it's really a grimace and it's actually an aggressive act. For us humans, a smile can be a submissive sign. You know, hey, I'm not going to hurt you. Look, I'm nice. I think when they're having that little debate, they kind of forget this natural joy smile that babies start displaying very young. This natural eyes crinkling, cheeks lifted. Now in this baby, you're not seeing, this baby has at least 4 teeth. You can kind of see them, but it's not a full toothy grin. It's just sort of open mouth, crinkled eyes, apples on their cheeks, and it happens really early. So I think this debate on what a smile means might really be more about that smile that we put on for the camera as opposed to like a truly joyful smile. All right, hopefully you've had time to study these little baby faces because they're kind of cute little facial expressions. So, oh, did you see it? Our brains are attracted to the one face that looks different. So everybody else was neutral, and then you had the one guy showing that sort of submissive, eyebrows up, a little bit of a smile. We tend to be attracted to the emotion that's being expressed that's different. So had it been all submissive people and one person looking angry or something, we probably would have been pulled by that. On average, introverts are better at detecting emotion on other people's faces than extroverts are. Extroverts tend to be better at expressing emotions in ways that other people can interpret. So kind of some personality differences that we've seen. Okay, so hopefully now that you've had some experience with my little line drawings, you saw the difference there. Again, our attention gets attracted to the person who's different, right? So now that one appeared to be an angry person. They had their eyebrows down in the middle, their face is their mouth is in a U shape. So we're primed to recognize negative emotions quickly. We tend to be drawn towards the individual who's showing maybe a sign of something we should be concerned about. Like the angry person, we should have our attention directed towards the one angry person in a group of neutral people, because that angry person could be a threat. So we are primed, we're designed to notice those kinds of angry, disgusted kinds of faces. All right, now this is a pretty fun little activity that I ask my students to do in class, and that is to figure out which, how don't know if emotion is necessarily the right word for all these expressions, but what's being expressed. Now these, I labeled this micro expression, but then I'm letting you see the expression, for a long duration. A micro expression in real life flashes across your face, usually in less than a second, before a lot of times you get conscious control over it and change your expression on purpose. So changing the colors here for you. So the person in the top left is flirtatious, top right is confident, middle is serious. In general, the average person is really good at recognizing micro expressions. Even a fleeting, less than a second micro expression, if you're looking at the person at the time that this micro expression passes, your unconscious brain will pick it up. Your limbic system and lower will pick up that micro expression and react to it. Just as the person can gain control over their face consciously and put their face into a neutral arrangement or smile or do something to cover that micro expression, your conscious brain can tell you, oh, don't worry about that little impression you just got. This is what really matters, is how they look now or what they're saying right now. And so a lot of times we will override our unconscious brain's attempts to warn us of things. Let's say instead of this being a flirtatious appearance, it was an angry face, but it just flashed briefly. A lot of times our cerebral cortex, our higher order part of our brain, will say, well, but they're smiling now. I'm sure that didn't mean anything. Maybe they were thinking about something that had nothing to do with me. And make up, sort of like smooth us over so that we don't react like we should to that flash of anger that the person displayed at us. So then we're unprepared when they assault us or something, because we told ourselves that we must have misjudged. One of the things that we have evolved is an overemphasis on the things people say and the put-on expressions that they arrange their faces into, and to ignore these micro expressions. So with practice, you can tune into the micro expressions, but it turns out that even with really detailed training, people are still they've trained Secret Service agents who are supposed to protect the president and the Supreme Court and things like that. And so one of the things they have to do is sort of look out over a crowd and look for the one person who seems angry or something, like a cue that maybe there's something off. They still, after really intensive training, they're only like 80% accurate in detecting a micro expression. So we might be expecting too much of ourselves if we want to try and train ourselves to use micro expressions more. What can we do to detect when someone's lying to us or if they're faking an emotion? Well, polygraph is not the answer. It's about 70% accurate. You can boost the accuracy by lying to the person who's taking the test and telling them that these are 100% accurate, or that I am such a skilled lie detector operator that I have a 100% track record. That actually can boost the accuracy if the person actually believes what's being said to them. But on average, they're about 70% accurate, which means that 30% of the time they're going to give us false information. So let's say somebody stole a computer from your place of employment, and so everybody who works here has to take a lie detector so we can try and figure out who stole the computer. So there's 1,000 employees, one of them stole the computer. All 1,000 employees take the test. If the polygraph is 70% accurate, and there's 1,000 employees, hopefully the one who took it will be identified, hopefully as a liar. When they say, oh no, I didn't take it, hopefully I'll be picked up. But so will 299 other people be picked up by the lie detector as telling a lie. And that's because lie detectors rely on faster breathing, sweaty palms, increased heart rate, all these things that do go along with physiological arousal. And the assumption is that when you lie, you're going to be physiologically aroused, which some people are. But some people are physiologically aroused by being asked to take a test to prove that they didn't do something that they didn't do, but now they're scared, right? And so that physiological arousal can cause them to have a spike of what looks like arousal during the time that they're being asked about the missing computer or whatever. So the biggest problem with lie detectors is that they accuse innocent people too often. So let's not use a polygraph. What about some little behavioral tics that people display that might be signs of lying? Well, sometimes when people are lying, they don't blink anymore. They hold your attention, look you straight in the eye, and so a lack of eye blinking. But some people blink more. Some people, as soon as they're asked the critical question, you start seeing a bunch of blinks as they're sort of like wiping their screen so they can tell the story they were intending to tell. So really, if you're going to use eye blinks, you better know what the base rate of eye blinks was before the lying. Like, you need to know, is this typical for this person to be blinking this much? Lip licking is really a common thing to do. If you ask a person, like the critical question that they need to tell you a lie about, before they start to deliver the lie, they'll lick their lips and then tell the lie. Sometimes before they answer, they'll clamp their lips shut. It's almost like their unconscious brain is trying to will them not to tell the truth. So they're like, a lot of times they'll start picking their clothing, start messing with their hair, start doing things that are really weirdly. A lot of times when people lie, they'll suddenly get an itch on their nose, kind of that Pinocchio effect, we call it. They'll suddenly go, oh, I feel like there's something on me, right? Those kinds of and a lot of times they do it, they don't even know they're doing it. So suddenly they're playing with their necklace, or they're suddenly playing with their hair, or they're suddenly clamping their lips shut or licking their lips. Those things can be pretty good clues. But you know what? A really good liar knows to control all those things. Like, sociopaths are the greatest at lying because they know to control all those things. So most of us are not very good at detecting liars. Now, Daniel Schachter did a study of lying and truth-telling. What he did was he had people go into an office and they were told to take the money out of a desk drawer and then either tell the truth or lie about whether they took the money out of the desk drawer or not. And then he did fMRIs while they were telling their liar the truth. So he knew what was the truth and he knew what was a lie, right, which is critical. And what he found is that there was more activity in the liar's left prefrontal cortex and deeper in their brain in the anterior cingulate cortex. But he said we are so far from being able to use this as a lie detector test because the differences were pretty subtle. They were statistically significant, but subtle. So it would be really difficult to confidently take a person who we really don't know whether they're telling the truth and use their brainwave patterns to distinguish truth from fiction. So we're working on it, but we're not there yet. Okay, what about some sex differences in how emotions are expressed and how emotions are detected? Women tend to express more emotions, and a lot of times people go right to crying. There are other emotions besides crying. Women tend to smile more often than men do, laugh more than men do. They laugh more easily. They do cry more often. So they tend to express more emotions. They tend to detect emotions better. One explanation for why women might be better at detecting emotions is that they have had to, over the course of human history, spend more time with the members of our species who can't talk yet and detect the emotions that they're experiencing. Are they uncomfortable? Are they happy? Whatever. And so that better detection capability generalizes to detecting the emotions of all sorts of other people. So when a woman expresses an emotion, it's more likely that other people will say that they're expressing that emotion because that's how they are, right? They're crying because they're a sensitive person. They're laughing because they have a good sense of humor. With men, when they express emotions, it's more likely that people will say that they're expressing that emotion because something just happened that made them angry. Something just happened that made them sad. right? Like something's going on that's making them experience those emotions. So if they laugh really easily, if a man laughs really easily, it's because something funny happened. If a woman laughs really easily, it's because she has a good sense of humor. So it's kind of like we attribute emotional differences for women to how they are, and men, they're reacting to the circumstance. Okay, this is what we like to call a gender-neutral picture. They used a computer to sort of blend together characteristics, and they asked participants in this study the question that you're seeing: is this person male or is this person female? And so there are ambiguous cues in all the pictures. And then they add in more and more details that have to do with what we might call gender expected behaviors. So the person on the left is smiling. And I already kind of told you earlier, I kind of tipped my hand that on average females tend to smile more. So the picture on the left is more likely to be labeled female by the respondents. The picture on the right, more likely to be labeled male by the respondents. Can you see facial expression reasons why stereotypically the respondents thought the person on the right was more likely to be male? Much more intense. While it's probably basically a neutral expression, there's sort of a hardness to it that people stereotypically associate with males. So there are some stereotypes that go along with interpreting emotions, right? Smiles are seen as more feminine. Straight faces, neutral faces, they're seen as more edgy and masculine. So sort of stereotypical judgments. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, why would a person judge the gender or the sex of a person based on facial expression? Research has shown that people make judgments about the sex of the person that's in front of them in about 20 milliseconds. 20 milliseconds. There's 1,000 milliseconds in a second. So 20 milliseconds. That's like really fast. The fastest thing that people can judge about somebody else is their sex. And so people make these judgments really quickly and then apply stereotypes really quickly so they can feel like they understand the person that they are seeing in front of them more. If they perceive the person in front of them to be female, they're more likely to think, not as threatening. Male, more threatening, right? So people have a motive to make these really unconscious, really automatic judgments of the sex of the person in front of them. And so facial expressions are one of those things that help a person to identify potentially the sex of the person in front of them and then, prepare themselves for what mental state that person seems to be in. So it seems to be automatic and unconscious. What about culture and emotional expression? Well, these facial expressions look a lot like the ones that I showed you on the baby's faces, don't they? It turns out that there are certain facial expressions that are universal. It doesn't have anything to do with culture. So it seems to be very basic hardwiring. Joy, surprise, fear, sadness, anger, and disgust are what's depicted in these 6 pictures. And those are the same across all cultures. Researchers have gone all around the world and had people show expressions. They'd say, show me what you look like when you're experiencing joy. Take a picture. And then also recognizing facial expressions. What emotion do you think this person's experiencing? And they show them a photograph like this. And these are the 6 emotions that all around the world people display the same way and recognize the same way. Now there's nuance to other emotions that you saw on the baby's faces. So there are some cultural variations on those, but these 6 seem to be hardwired and universal. Emotion detection and context. Okay, so here we have a guy making that face, and he appears to be holding a dirty diaper or underwear or something gross. So when you see him holding that and you see that expression on his face, you're probably interpreting that facial expression as disgust. If he has that exact same facial expression, you add in a couple tears and he holds his hands like that, well, now it looks like he's sad, right? So the facial expression hasn't changed. All I did was add on some tears and he moved his hands. Same exact facial expression, and now he's got a fist balled up and ready to punch somebody. So now it looks like anger. So context really plays a role in how we interpret this individual's expression of emotions. So things can, because some people's faces do look very similar when they're disgusted or angry or sad, right? And so context helps us to figure out what emotion that person, and you can see why detecting emotions can be useful. We've got on the right-hand side, maybe somebody who we would like to get away from because he looks like he's going to be aggressive, and he kind of looks like he's looking at us, right? So it'd be really informative for us to recognize that he's in an angry state and maybe change our behavior or leave the situation or something like that. The sad person might elicit a different response from us. The person who's holding something disgusting might elicit a different response from us. So it is important for us to be able to understand and interpret other people's emotional states. And context helps us. All right. In case I wasn't clear on what you were looking at, there are the labels. All right. That concludes my coverage of emotion. Please know that that is not all there is to say about emotion, but that's all I'm going to say. So I will see you in the next chapter.